All right, and in one fell swoop, we are live with another book discussion. Fridays at noon, I get together with everybody and discuss a book that I read on leadership and management. This week, our book is Atomic Habits. I'm going to move it for the camera here. Atomic Habits by James Clear. James Clear. And I got to say right off the bat, this is a book you should get. It's absolutely wonderful from a personal development standpoint, but it also has huge insight into how to get your team, your employees, to behave, I want to say, in a way that you want to, and establish the right habits which equal a little bit more productivity. So it gets into a little bit of motivation and accountability, but there's a ton of personal takeaways that you can take from it. So it's a book that I very much enjoyed, one of the best books I've read in the last couple of months. So definitely recommend that you check it out. So with that being said, I've got a lot of notes, and I actually skipped over a lot of my notes. For those who haven't tuned into one of these book discussions before, we simply go through some of the highlights that I underlined in the book as I went through it. And so I'll just kind of pull out some of those highlights and talk about why I thought it was important, and also what the application may be for you in your own leadership. And so just checking here and making sure that we have some people jumping on here, and it looks like we do. Good. And if you have any questions about it, any comments, if you've read the book before, then definitely drop down in the comments section, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Twitter, whether you're on Facebook, tune into this, and we will definitely, I'll definitely kind of interact with that. It's meant to be a little interactive, so if you have questions, by all means, drop down in the comments section, and we'll tackle that. So very briefly to start out, what James Clear does to kind of clarify things is, what are habits? So good baseline as we start the discussion out. A habit is a routine or behavior that is performed regularly, and in many cases automatically. So it is a routine or behavior that is performed regularly, and what happens is it happens more regularly, it then becomes routine. So one of the things that he talks about is, one of the reasons that people don't address habits is because they are small things generally. They're not huge things that you address. So he wants to tackle that again right off the bat too, and he's talking about why small habits make a big difference. And if you can get 1% better each day for 1 year, just 1% better in anything, in 1 day, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done. So that's the power of compounding interest. Janine, so good to see you here. So that's the power of compounding interest, just 1%. Every day, if you get 1% better, and habits are one of the great ways to make those small improvements that get those larger results down the road. Also talking through just a couple of takeaways that I have on this. One thing that he talks about is systems, and putting in habits in place to develop the right systems. The process is what actually is important in so much of this stuff, and we'll dive into that process here in the one that he outlines in this. But I like this particular takeaway, and it's good for all of us because we hyper-focus on goals, and goals are hugely important, don't get me wrong. But you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So it isn't that you rise to those goals, it's the systems that you put in place. That's what gets you lasting change and lasting results. It isn't just a one-off thing where you achieve something. It is something that becomes ingrained in you, and then it's something that can be renewed and you can accomplish on a regular basis after that. True behavior change. So diving into some of the reasons that we have trouble establishing habits, because we've all tried to establish the right habits. We're all aware of some of the bad habits that we have, but it's difficult for us to overcome some of those things. And one of the main issues with habits, whether you're trying to form one or whether you are trying to get rid of one, is that true behavior change is a change in identity. The biggest barrier to positive change at any level, individual, team, society, is an identity conflict, not necessarily dealing with the habit yourself. So we just got done talking about having a system in place, and that's hugely important. But the system will naturally run up against a problem with your identity. So things like, I'm terrible with directions. I'm just not a morning person. I'm bad at remembering people's names. That's one for me. I'm always late. I'm not good with technology. I'm horrible with math. These things create a natural barrier and a natural obstacle for you to establish the right sort of habits. So what you want to do is look for ways to kind of flip that a little bit as from an identity standpoint. And in his case, what he recommends in this is that it's a simple 2-step process. All right, decide the type of person that you want to be, and then prove it to yourself with small wins. So let's say writing. I can't establish a habit of writing because I always get writer's block. Well, think about it in terms of what kind of person is a writer. Think about what they do, and then start with little pieces of progress towards that to reframe your identity shift from somebody who always gets writer's block to somebody who behaves in the way that a writer would. All right? So decide the type of person that you want to be and prove it to yourself with little wins. Start there. Start with what that kind of goal is, who you want to be, and then work backwards from the results you want to the type of person who could get those results. Now your focus shifts from writing a book, in this case, to being the type of person who is consistent and reliable. That's an identity-based way of tackling that and getting to the foundation of a habit and working through that. Kind of getting into and jumping around here just a little bit. There's, like I say, a ton of takeaways in this, so I'm bouncing around. There was probably more underlining I did in this book than I've done in any of the books that I've reviewed over the last few months. As habits are created, and this just gets back to kind of that motivation for you, as habits are created, the level of activity in the brain decreases. Your brain skips the process of trial and error and creates a mental rule of, well, if this, then that. So that's one of the big powers of habits. When you can form a habit, when you work through it and form that habit, it isn't that habit then constrains you and controls you. It allows another level of freedom because your brain stops worrying about whatever that is, whether it's going to the gym, let's say. Let's use the other classic example. If you want to go to the gym, then create a habit of going to the gym. Then you're not worried about it. You're not thinking about it throughout your afternoon before you head out to work or, in the morning the next day, that sort of thing. So habits are one of those things that actually allows you to accomplish much more because it becomes an automatic routine in your brain that you don't have to think about anymore. That frees up that time to think about other things. So getting into the nuts and bolts of creating good habits and breaking bad habits, he comes up with a 4-step process for each of these. All right, and these are all based on something he took, and the author escapes me, but he gives kind of credit where credit is due on it. 4 steps. Cue, there's a cue for whatever a habit is, craving, the response, and the reward. All right, and we'll talk about how that manifests itself. So if you want to create good habits, for the cue, you want to make it obvious. All right, you want to make it obvious that this is something that needs to happen. You want to make it attractive. You want to make it easy, and you want to make it satisfying. We'll go through each of those 4 steps. Now, if you want to break a bad habit, you want to make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult. And again, there's some great little ideas on how to do this. And last, make it unsatisfying. So that's kind of the rubric that we go through in this book. So talking through, first thing is going with cues, those things that initiate the need for that habit, all right? So you want to make those cues obvious for good habits, and you want to make them minimal or disappear for bad habits as much as possible. And he goes back to Carl Jung, the psychologist, and he says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it faith. So until you make those unconscious cues that you're feeling for why you stop off for coffee at Starbucks, don't go to the gym, whatever it happens to be, until you recognize those and bring those things into the conscious behavior, you can't deal with them. And I draw the correlation here to leadership and problems in business. A lot of people understand what the issues are in their particular organization or with a relationship with a peer, a colleague, a boss, an employee, whatever that is. But they don't consciously think about it enough to be able to pinpoint it and put something specific to it. And it, without actually thinking about it, putting it down on paper is the classic way of doing this. Putting it down on paper, without that, it's difficult to actually deal with it because it's almost like you're dealing with the shadow of the issue as opposed to the issue itself. So again, as far as we talk about cues, those initial aspects of habits, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The first step in changing, and it kind of doubles down on this concept, but the first step in changing bad habits is to be on the lookout for them. All right, again, don't go through the day. Part of the power of habits is that you can actually switch them into your unconscious brain. And so that's really cool when you're doing productive things, and those are habits that's why you get that 1% every day. You can magnify the power and productivity of your work. But bad habits are similar in that they hamstring us and hold us back from our potential. So just calling out where you are exercising bad habits, whether it could be eating, it could be time management, how many times you jump on social media through the course of your workday, that sort of thing. Just actually calling them out. And again, he doesn't actually throw it out here, but I recommend putting it down on paper, putting it out there, bringing it out into the forefront so that it can become part of your conscious mind. Once you recognize an issue, then you can actually start dealing with it in either a positive or negative way, the way whatever you're dealing with, a good habit or a bad habit in this case. It talks about when you want to start a new habit. It's important that you aren't broad in your speech. I want to lose weight. All right, this goes back to goal setting. All right, and setting up smart goals. In this case, what he wants to talk about is an implementation intention. All right. So they have a striking effect. He goes through a few of the research papers on this. People who make a specific plan for when and where, an implementation, that's all you need to worry about. The when and the where they will perform a new habit are more likely to follow through. Many people think they lack motivation when what they really lack is clarity. So it's not, I'm going to go to the gym more, or I'm going to I'm going to go to the gym 3 times next week. It's I'm going to go to the gym on Monday at 6 p.m., on Wednesday at 5 p.m., and in the morning on Saturday morning at 7 a.m. So get very specific where and when. That's what you need for an implementation intention to really get going with the good habits that you're looking to put into place. The other trick to this, to starting out with habits, is what he calls habit stacking. And so it's taking a current habit that you have. So again, in unconscious things, you might wake up in the morning, go downstairs and get a pot of coffee going, and then start going throughout your day. All right, that's your habit. That's what you do every morning, let's say. What you want to do is then stack your new habit that you want to form to the existing habit that you already have. All right. So after current habit, I will do new habit. So it may be reading the paper. Let's just use that example. So you go downstairs, start the coffee maker, and then you would open up the paper. So you don't have a problem with the start. You're attaching it to a current habit that you have. Really like that. And you can just keep doing that. You can stack habit on top of habit on top of habit. All right. Take advantage of the natural momentum that comes from one behavior leading into the next. All right. Getting into a little bit more, and again, talking about those cues and making it obvious, make sure that the best choice is the one that is the most obvious. All right. And he'll get into environment just a little bit here, but I'll use this as an example. So, he uses the example of environment where next to the cash register in the break room at an organization were a whole bunch of sodas. That's where the soda thing was. Well, so instead what they did is they moved the soda cooler to the back of the break room, and next to the cash register in the lunchroom, they put water. And then what they did is instead of having candy bars there, they actually moved to fruit there. What they found is that the sodas and the candy bars, for instance, decreased 11%, something like that. And the water increased 25% from where it was. So there was a corresponding difference. You made it obvious. All right, that's part of making it easy too. I think that's what he gets into. But it can be that you, using the paper example, somebody sets the paper next to the coffee maker. That makes it obvious to you what the good habit is. All right. It may be that you put cues and reminders to yourself to go to the gym every day so that it's something that's on your calendar. It's obvious. People see it, that sort of thing. So you want to make those things obvious as much as possible. And the flip side of that is you make your bad habit stuff disappear, a la the soda example from before. Oh yes, and one of the other comments here. So talking through environment here. So motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more is the name of this particular chapter. You can train yourself to link a particular habit with a particular context. And what he goes into is habits can often be easier to change in a new environment. So let's say you wanted to not get scones every morning with your Starbucks coffee. All right. So change the environment and go to something as simple as going to a different Starbucks can change the environment, which makes it easier for you to get into a new habit or break an old habit, if you will, in this particular case. So look to change the environment if you get stuck with things. When you step outside your normal environment, you leave your behavioral biases and some of those habits behind. All right. Secret to self-control is to make the cues for your good habits obvious and the cues for your bad habits invisible. That's one of the main things. And we'll get into kind of a summary. I really, really enjoyed the way that this book was structured. At the end of every little chapter, there is a chapter summary which goes over the high points, which I always appreciate in books like this. And then he also has, and I'll show you the end one once we get to that point. He also has a rubric that he fills out for the whole obvious, easy, invisible, that sort of stuff. So again, you have these little summaries that you can go back to, and I absolutely will be planning to go back to this book for my own personal stuff in the days and weeks to come, and it just makes it much easier than me spinning through the pages and looking for where I've highlighted before. Moving through again, we talk about habit stacking is what we talked about. So take a current habit and then do the new habit right after that prior habit that you're already doing. That's great. But then you can also do what he calls temptation bundling. All right. So you do the habit you need. All right. So talking through temptation is a cue for those habits. Do the habit you need and then do the habit that you want as well. All right. I don't know whether it is here or not. But one of the things was one programmer actually hooked up his computer to where it would only play Netflix when the exercise bike was running. So all of a sudden you took something like Netflix binging, which can be an unproductive behavior, and he married the exercise bike to that, so where he could only take that one particular habit when he did this other habit. So that was one way that they bundled it. So take something that you need to do, and hey, maybe coffee is what it is, and then that becomes the one where you deal with the next thing that you want to do. Again, habit stacking, working with what you currently have, leveraging that as much as possible to bring out some of those other habits that you want to bring in. We imitate the habits. He talks through the role of family and friends in shaping your habits. And we imitate the habits of three groups in particular: those that are close to us, those that are the multitude, the many, and those that are powerful. All right. So talking about the first one of the most effective things you can do to build better habits is to join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. So in my neighborhood at home, there is an enormous amount of bikers right next to Red Rock. It's a great place to go riding your bikes. So there's huge clubs, and that's one way if you want to start biking, start exercising. Doing something where you can be around people doing the same thing is something that's naturally going to pull you in that particular direction. Nothing sustains motivation better than belonging to the tribe. It transforms a personal quest into a shared one. So one thing that I would like to do perhaps in the new year, nothing quick right away, but is join a swim club. So instead of just going to the gym and swimming, actually joining a swim club so that I'm around people that are going swimming every day, a few times a week, whatever it is. That's going to naturally help you hold yourself accountable for that new habit. So whatever it is that you're looking to do habit-wise, look to find ways to surround yourself with people. When changing your habits means challenging the tribe, this is going against the many. So being in a group where a bunch of people are against you means challenging the tribe. Change is unattractive. All right. When changing your habit means fitting in with the tribe, change is very attractive. I'm going to say this again. This kind of mirrors the whole close thing. The fuzzy line that was drawn there. When changing your habits means challenging the tribe, change is unattractive. When changing your habits means fitting in with the tribe, change is very attractive. And I'd seen this before, but I will show it to you. It was a study that was done, and what they had was they had 10 people go into a room. And actually, 9 of them were actors or part of the study, and one of them was, well, 9 of them were actors, and only one person was a part of the study. And very simple, they went through this a number of times. It was, which of these lines is most like this line? And so they go through a few exercises where it was right, where everybody says da, 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 da. Then when they get to the last one, they have all of the 9 people give the obviously wrong answer. And what they found is most of the time, the person that wasn't one of the actors, the person that was actually, being studied and part of the process, actually gave intentionally the wrong answer just to be able to fit in. And so we'll do that, especially if we're tempted to do bad habits. Then we're tempted to go with the tribe, with the flow. But if you're with a group of people that are doing the right thing or the thing that you want to have happen, it's easier to go along with that. That's one of those things that makes it much easier. Talking about imitating the powerful, once we fit in, so once we've accomplished that last one, we look for ways to stand out as much as possible. So we look for best practices. We read about people who have been successful, which is all great, but we look to imitate those particular individuals. And so you'll find that even if those individuals have bad habits, that you will find people actually imitating those bad habits as part of the way to get the message across. Continuing on, I really liked some of these points here. Motion allows, one of the ways, talking about procrastination, I guess. But more often than not, we do it because motion allows us to feel like we are making progress, but without running the risk of failure. So these are these people that say constantly plan, have the plan in place, but never actually implement the plan. You feel like you're doing something productive. You're planning, you're doing contingency work, that sort of thing, but you're not actually doing anything really productive. All right, so you haven't risked failure yet. If you want to master a habit, the key is to start with repetition, not perfection. This is the first takeaway of the third law that he talks about. You need to just get the reps in. And so talking through the repetition in regards to habit forming, and I'll keep using the gym because that's a classic habit, and we're 2 months away from everybody setting their New Year's resolutions to get in better shape. It was a friend of mine ages ago who I worked with, a colleague that I worked with, who talked about going to the gym, and he says the most important thing is to just go. Even if you just jump on one machine, do a bunch of reps, and then leave, just going every single day makes it easier. And he talks about here, once, well, actually, I'll talk it through because it's a powerful point that I took away from it. Just talking about repetition right now. So even small things, once you're there, it's easy to say, okay, you know what, I'm here, I'll go ahead and do 15 minutes on the bike. Or I'll do 5 minutes on the bike. And then, okay, well, I've done 5, why don't I just do 10? And so just even the simplest things. So he talks through repetition. One of the most common questions that he hears, and he's been blogging about habits for 7-8 years now, I think. One of the most common questions I hear is, how long does it take to build a new habit? And this is something that's going to go into, you're going to hear in my lexicon, you're going to hear this come up with me when we start talking about habits, because I really took this away as something that's important and mirrors some of the stuff that I've seen before. And that is not how long does it take to build a new habit, but what people really should be asking is, how many does it take to form a new habit? Not how long, but how many repetitions, no matter how small those particular repetitions are. I really want to dive back into you know what I am. I'm going to jump around just a little bit here. When we talk about repetition and small things and just making those initial steps that are really important, what I really want to get to is what he called the 2-minute rule. When you're starting out, a new habit should not feel like a challenge. So what he says is, when you're starting to try a new habit, it shouldn't exceed 2 minutes. Make it easy. Make it simple. Take away all of the excuses you have and just make it 2 minutes or less. Then eventually, when you get into that habit, you can build upon that. So when we talk about going to the gym, maybe it is that you just go to the gym, you stop by on the way home from work, and you go in there and you work out on one machine. 5 minutes. We'll break the 2-minute rule in this particular case. But really try to keep those things very simple. Again, you're looking to put in reps. All right? It's not a how long, it's how many reps you put in to establish that new habit. And so the more reps you put in, the more powerful some of those things become. He talks also very, very quickly about how it is remarkable how little friction is required to prevent unwanted behavior. It can be simply putting the remote control for the TV not in the living room, but in the kitchen drawer. That 10 seconds that it would take for you to walk from the couch to the kitchen drawer and back to turn on the TV can stop you from watching more TV if that's something that you want to do. It could be that he talks about overeating and using single serve packets instead of, large packets. It could be if you want to reduce your coffee intake. It can simply be putting coffee way on the top shelf and tea on the bottom shelf. Again, he says, it is remarkable how little friction, how little extra is required to prevent unwanted behavior. Make it just a little inconvenient to do the bad habits. Just a little. Putting something in a different place, putting your cell phone in a different room is an example he uses. That's something that can switch those behaviors around. So something to definitely take with you. Now, one of the more powerful things that he mentions here in the power of habits is that researchers estimate that 40 to 50% of our actions on any given day are done out of habit. All right? 40 to 50% of our actions every day are done out of habit. Habits are automatic choices that influence the conscious decisions that follow. And so there is this diagram, and he just talks about the initial decision, and you can go to good decision or a bad decision. All right, and that sets the direction on where you eventually end up. So the habits that you have, those unconscious things actually have an effect on the conscious things that you do later. They take away different options. And so the more unconscious habits you have that are good or bad, they affect the direction you have. And he has it on here as a continuum, good day versus bad day. So if you keep making good habit decisions, you head towards better days than if you have bad days. So, and that may be a situation where if you find that, say at work, you're having more bad days than you're having good days, look to some of your habits and see if you can flip some of those things around to have more good days. Skipping past the 2-minute rule since I jumped ahead on that one. Really like that concept. One of these classic things that we talk about as far as motivating, say, employees also goes for yourself. All right? What is rewarded is repeated. What is punished is avoided. And one of the concepts that he's talking about is the difficulty of forming habits are that oftentimes the benefit is down the road, whereas the cost is right up front. All right. I want to have 6-pack abs. All right. But it's going to take me 3 months of going to the gym to get there. So every day, the short term is pain, whereas the long term is where the pleasure comes in. And we will almost always, we're naturally wired to look for pleasure over pain. So skipping that workout in the near term, it's time dilation, that sort of thing, where we will forego better benefits down the road to get the immediate return now. Just a good concept and just something to be aware of. Yeah, here it is. The cost of your good habits are in the present. The cost of your bad habits are in the future. Smoking. You get in the short term, you are getting a nicotine buzz, you're getting a break from work, you're getting social things. It's only down the road that those bad elements come in. So again, you're focused on the short term. All right. One of the cardinal rules of behavior change is that what is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. I'm going to say that again. It's important. What is immediately rewarded is repeated, and what is immediately punished is avoided. So if you want to establish habits or break habits, look to do immediate rewards, some sort of immediate reward. And depends on what it is and what it is. But if you want to avoid a particular habit, then set up immediate punishments for that. Maybe it is giving up money, for instance, that sort of thing. There's somewhere in here it came up, and I've had this, and I forget the website. You can probably look it up. But if you want to form a new habit, you can have an accountability partner elsewhere. And there's elaborate ones that are done online where if you give, say, $100, and if you don't follow through, let's say, and go to the gym or finish a marathon or something along those lines, those $100 will go to your opposing political party's general fund, for instance. So there's an immediate punishment. If you don't do this sort of thing, then you are being punished by for whatever reason. It could be that you have an accountability partner where if I don't show up to the gym 3 days a week, then somebody gets $100, for instance. You know, it may be your trainer, it might be somebody else, whatever it is. Make it so that there's an immediate punishment for something and you will avoid it. All right, make it an immediate reward, and that kind of goes both ways with that. Make it an immediate reward, and you'll be more likely to follow through on it. Just one of the really good takeaways on it. Few more things. The most effective form of motivation is progress. So he's talking through habit tracking. So I'm in the process of looking to lose weight. I really am. Every morning I weigh myself and I track that weight and track that performance. Progress is hugely motivating. I don't have a problem sticking to my diet or my exercise routine when I'm making progress. When I go through a patch of 3, 4, 5 days where I'm not making any progress, that's when the motivation starts waning. So find ways to create progress in what you're doing, and you're going to be naturally more motivated. And that's a huge element as far as motivating employees. Make sure that they see that progress. That's why I'm a huge fan of putting up your most common productivity metrics up on a board where everybody can see it and you can track it every single day. People want to see progress towards a goal. That's what's hugely motivating. There's an old Harvard study that gets at that as well when they looked at diary entries of scientists, and that's what they found. They were most happy when they were making simple progress, not even huge breakthroughs, but simple progress towards their goal on a regular basis. Missing once, it's talking about sticking with those good habits. You want to have that flexibility. So in one of my single step leadership sessions, we talked about the first 15 minutes of your day. And what I say is your goal is 3 times a week. It's not 5 times a week. You won't necessarily be able to carve out the first 15 minutes. There's going to be an emergency. There's going to be something that comes up. You're going to run into your boss on the way, to your desk, and they're going to give you something to do. So missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. So give yourself a little bit of grace. Give yourself a little bit of leeway, but be tough with yourself as far as missing that on a regular basis, because that's where the new habit starts getting formed. The breaking of a habit doesn't matter if the reclaiming of it is fast. And this is one of those things where we again get back to, say, going to the gym. Lost days hurt you more than successful days help you. All right? I'm going to say that again. Lost days hurt you more than successful days help you. Whatever the habit is that you're looking to form, all right? Keeping with it, even at the very baseline level of keeping with it, is better than having a misstep. All right, this is why bad workouts are often the most important workouts. I think there's a quote from Michael Jordan in here talking about that sort of thing, where going there on the days that you don't feel like going to the gym, on the days that you don't feel like practicing, even if your practice is terrible, you at least showed up, you didn't have a bad day, so you didn't have a setback in the formulation of your habit. Again, that stick-to-itiveness is so, so very vital. Couple things, and then I'll kind of get to the summary section of this. Talking about the truth about talent and forming good habits. You still want to be, I want to say, in your wheelhouse and the things that interest you. If you're going to form habits, you want to form ones that you're going to be more likely to be successful at. I can form a habit in regards to, let's say, gymnastics, for instance, but I'm 6'2" and I'm old. I'm not going to be stellar at it. Whereas I can form a habit, let's say, in regards to, I'll use a bad example because any chess prodigy will tell you you're wrong, but set a habit in regards to chess and being a grandmaster. I can go ahead and establish that habit now, and I have a likelihood of reaching, the eventual goal. So what is it that you're looking for? And you list out 4 things. What feels like fun to me, but work to others, that's an area to lean into. What makes me lose track of time, those times when you get into that flow state where time just kind of slips by, look for those times. Where do I get greater returns than the average person? What am I naturally better at? And then what comes naturally, kind of mirroring in on that one. But also look to the habits that you're looking to form. Set yourself up for success. You have a choice as to what you work on and what you try to foster in yourself. Do so in a way that's responsible. You also, and this is one thing I keep coming across in these books, is talking through training. You want your training to be in what he calls the Goldilocks zone. You want it to be challenging, but you don't want it to be too challenging to where you get demoralized. But you also don't want it easy. And so what we see happen all of the time, good to see you here. What we see happen all of the time is that training is too easy on the job. You make it so that people almost can't fail. You want to stretch them a little, not so much that they get crushed under the weight of whatever scenario you're working them through, but you want to challenge them a bit. Yes. And so that's just one that called out to me because it's something that keeps coming up in these books, and it's something that I keep seeing out there in organizations, is them not doing tough enough training, not challenging their people, and that's stunting the growth of their team in general. Now, personally, looking back on some things, and this is an exercise that I would recommend on almost a monthly or quarterly basis. I think he talks about doing it bi-yearly, but just getting kind of in touch with the habits that you're forming. I reflect on my progress or lack thereof by answering 3 questions. What went well this year, or just the month or the quarter? What didn't go so well this year, and what did I learn? All right, that's making sure that you are, as he calls it, the integrity report. And are you working towards the things that you want to work on? Are you suffering, in areas that you shouldn't be? That sort of thing. Just a little kind of gut check a little bit into what's going on. So summarizing the book here. So how to create good habits. All right, and so this is what I talk about as far as wonderful summaries in this book. So he takes 4 principles and breaks down some of the main high points to get to in each of those principles. So to create a good habit, you want to make it obvious. All right? You want to make it attractive. You want to make it easy. You want to make it satisfying. All right? So obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. Each of those things, if you have a big habit that you really want to nail down, then really, again, write it out. Get specific on it. Take these 4 areas and talk about how you're going to do. How are you going to make it obvious? How are you going to make it attractive? How are you going to make it easy? How are you going to make it satisfying? The make it obvious one just popped into my mind. One of the most powerful things to do is to tell your team. If it's something at work, tell your team that you're going to be working on this habit. You get that positive peer pressure, something that helps you along the way, not something that minimizes you. But tell your team you're going to do something. You're going to be more apt to follow along with it. Neil, good to see you here as well. Now, to break the bad habit, all right, and in so many, it's Tim Ferriss that talks through, what should I do, and then what should I stop doing. All right, it's important, especially as busy as everybody is out there. If you're looking to add something to your daily routine, then you need to look at what you need to take out. And one of the best things to do is to take out the bad habits that you have. Then that negative becomes a positive. But to break a bad habit, you want to make it invisible. All right, you want to make it unattractive. You want to make it difficult, and you want to make it unsatisfying. All right, so invisible, unattractive, difficult, unsatisfying. That's how to tackle those ones. Lots of great takeaways. Again, I'll pull it up here. Atomic Habits, Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results. This was one of the best books I've read in the last couple of months on here. I definitely recommend you pick it up. It's going to have an enormous impact on your personal life, but it has a ton of really good stuff that you can apply to the employees and the people that you oversee in your leadership role. So I hope you check it out. Next week, I'm going to be going through Drive, and I forgot to bring it with me. Drive by Daniel Pink, one of those classic ones, and kind of goes along a little bit with this. They hit on some of the same points in there, but that's going to be the book next Friday, noon, Drive by Daniel Pink. I hope to see you over here for that. In the meantime, take care. Everybody have a great weekend, and I will talk to you all later. Thanks. Oh, D-Wise, since you just pinged in here, yes, you can purchase any of my books on Amazon. I have 4 books on Amazon right now. I recommend starting out with The Roadmap. That's my favorite. And then The 7 Deadly Sins of Leadership. That would be my second favorite. But you can check them out on Amazon. Just look up Cameron Morrissey, and you'll find me there. Thanks, D-Wise, and good to see everybody on here. Bye-bye.